So, you just bought yourself a Steam Deck, or maybe you're interested in buying one. At the time of recording this video, unfortunately, they're all out of stock, but let's all hope that that's remedied and fixed, or you already own a Steam Deck and you enjoy it and you're just watching this video for the fun of it. Today, I just wanted to share some of my favorite tips, tricks, features, things I love, and what I think is vital to fully enjoying your experience with the Steam Deck. The Steam store is your first stop, and it can get overwhelming really fast. Your wish list can spiral out of control and your wallet can empty just as quickly. But here's the thing, be patient. Steam has a ton of sales. Every holiday, every season, during gaming events, and even random monthly sales. Chances are whatever you're hoping to buy will be on sale sooner rather than later. And here's another thing. If you end up finding a game that you genuinely enjoy, click into the game's page and go to the developer or publisher. Chances are that there's another game there that you're likely to enjoy. More often than not, you'll discover other games in a similar genre, sequels, prequels, or related titles. One of my favorites is Devolver Digital. They consistently put out some of the most unique and high quality indie titles out there. And last but not least, my favorite Steam store feature is refunds. The Steam refund policy is honestly one of the best out there. The general rule of how it works is essentially if you purchase the game within the last 14 days, if you have less than 2 hours on it, you can request a refund. Now, it's not always promised, but for the most part, I've had success with getting a game that I just didn't vibe with and then deciding to just refund it and invest that money into something else that I want to play. Steam is very forgiving in most cases, and if you got buyer's remorse or just don't vibe with a game, refund it, no stress. So this part might feel a little tedious at first, but honestly, it makes a huge difference in terms of how long you can play your Steam Deck, especially for games where battery life or performance becomes an issue. The quick access menu and specifically performance settings are your best friends. I'll be honest, I let this stuff hinder my enjoyment of the Steam Deck for entirely too long, as I just wanted to load into a game and play without worrying about all these different settings and adjustments that I can make, which is what you'd think everybody would want, right? But I was misunderstanding these settings and their benefits and how they work. Instead, I was constantly enabling the performance settings, looking at all the stats and wondering, is this thing running well? Once I finally took time to understand what the performance toggles do, gaming on the Steam Deck actually became way more enjoyable and way more satisfying. So the three main things you should focus on here are refresh rate, TDP, and per game profile. This lets you control the screen refresh rate and maximum frame rate the Steam Deck runs at during a game. For me, playing most titles at 45 frames per second is a really good sweet spot. You can drop down to 30 frames per second for heavier games or push up to even 60 frames per second for lighter ones. Find what works for you. There is no golden rule. TDP, which stands for thermal design power, controls the battery usage and fan noise. This varies by game, but I usually limit mine to around 12 or 13 watts, and sometimes even lower. It keeps the fan quiet and gives me noticeably better battery life. This setting alone has significantly changed how long I can play my Steam Deck unplugged. And for me, the less fan noise I have while playing, the better. All right, so let's talk about per game profiles, and I'm gonna be completely honest with you guys. I ignored this feature completely up until making this video, and ever since I discovered it, it has honestly completely changed the way I enjoy my Steam Deck and tweaking these settings. Essentially what it does, if you don't know, is it allows you to save all these performance settings you're changing in between your backlog of 50 different games. So for me, essentially I launch the game I'm playing, save the profile, tweak whatever settings I need, and honestly forget it from there. Again, this has just made the world of a difference and removed the headache from tweaking all these settings. Decky Loader is a straight up essential must-have. It might sound a bit advanced at first, but it's honestly very easy to install and use. If you don't know, Decky is a community-built tool that massively expands your customization of what you can do on the Steam Deck. In terms of what it can do, it can get very overwhelming very fast, and depending on if Valve pushes a firmware update that breaks something, that can cause a hurdle. So I'll say this, less is more. So I'm only going to share my everyday use plugins, essentially my EDC Decky setup. When you're perusing through games on your Steam Deck, don't blindly trust that green check mark. Essentially, all that's saying is that the game launches and somewhat runs well. Proton DB badges pulls from real community experiences and shows detailed reports on what games work and what games don't. It's far more reliable information and gives you much more peace of mind before purchasing and installing. Deck settings is next up, and this one's pretty similar to Proton DB badges, but even better in some ways. Not only does it give you recommended system settings, but you can open this while a game is running and see recommended in-game settings to fine-tune performance specifically for the Steam Deck and other handheld gaming PCs. There's multiple user reports, so you can choose what works best for you, poke around, explore, see what works. Next up is HLTB and Magic pods. HLTB, which stands for how long to beat, is essentially just a little label that tells you how long a game takes to beat or 100% complete. So for us time-conscious players, we can be a little more mindful about how we're spending our time. And then Magic Pods, my other favorite nice everyday use, essentially just gives you control over whatever headphones of choice that you're using. For me, that's my AirPods, and essentially this just gives me access to noise cancellation, pass-through, all those little features directly from the Steam Deck, opposed to having to fiddle with the headphones themselves. Last up is one of my favorites, and that's CSS Loader. This is probably the most popular Decky plugin, and for good reason. CSS Loader lets you get nerdy and completely customize the look of your Steam Deck with an insane amount of control. There's honestly too much to cover here, and just like the Decky tool itself, this can get very overwhelming very fast, but the big takeaway here is that it's easy to use and incredibly customizable. For me, I enjoy customizing the overall look and design of the UI of my Steam Deck, customizing themes as well as customizing the UI to fine-tune the entire experience to my liking. So I recommend spending some time just customizing, playing around, and figuring out a look that fits your style. Best of all, you can simply disable or uninstall a lot of these plugins if they happen to just be causing issues with your Steam Deck. Honestly, with all this said though, this is part of the Steam Deck or handheld PC experience that I love so much. It's a device that you can buy and customize completely to your taste, time, and style. You're not just limited to what the developer wants to limit you to, but you can take things further and fine-tune your experience. So my final thoughts is this. Of course, there's so much more that you can do with the Steam Deck that I didn't even touch on here, from cloud gaming with NVIDIA GeForce Now, Xbox Game Pass, and PlayStation Portal, but I'm not going to touch on that because honestly, my internet sucks too much to really enjoy those features. But you can also endlessly install games, emulators, and customize this console however your heart desires. I honestly try not to get too carried away with all this customization, as that sometimes ends up just taking away from the experience that the Steam Deck provides, which is that it's just a great way to relax and play games.